You just merely glance into the mirror and say Bloody Mary 3 times while standing in a dimly lit bathroom. After then, a ghost is believed to appear, occasionally clutching a dead child, and other times threatening to take yours. But if Bloody Mary was real, who was she? Let's directly get into the depth of this story. The Bloody Mary legend may be made up, but the woman behind the mirror and the inspiration for it were real. She was nothing less than a royal figure. These are the true beginnings of the real Bloody Mary. The first female monarch of England, Queen Mary I, did not simply inherit the throne. She seized it with a level of ambition never before seen by those who wanted to stop her. Queen Mary I is remembered in history as a bloodthirsty monster, but her true story is much more complex. The rise of Mary I was a staggeringly bold endeavor with little chance of success, according to historian Sarah Gristwood. Even so, she was greeted with applause when she entered London on August 3, 1553. In the words of one contemporary chronicler, it was said that no one could remember there ever having been public rejoicing such as this. But what happened between then and now that despite all the love that she received, she is referred to as Bloody Mary? The story starts with her birth. Mary was a victim of sexism since she was born, and she was not the long-awaited son that Henry VIII and Catherine of Aragon had hoped for when she was born on February 18, 1516. Mary experienced a lifetime of shame over her own femininity at the age of 17, when her father, upset by the lack of a male heir to the crown, dissolved his marriage to her mother. The young Mary was completely cut off from her mother as a result, and she was not allowed to see her again. The king afterwards married Anne Boleyn, the maid of honor of his now ex-wife, who let him down by bearing him a further daughter, Elizabeth. Boleyn pushed Parliament to proclaim Mary to be illegitimate because she was concerned she might impede Elizabeth's succession, and she was successful in doing so. Of course, Boleyn was later beheaded by her husband for treason, but by this time the damage to Mary's name had been done. She was welcomed back to court after suffering Henry and 3 further stepmothers, only to witness her younger half-brother, Edward VII, ascended to the throne. But much to her dismay, 6 years later, when Edward passed away, he made an effort to go against his father's desires by giving the throne to his Protestant cousin, Lady Jane Grey, and excluding Mary and her younger half-sister Elizabeth from the succession. Mary had the option of seeking safety with relatives in Europe, but she chose to stay in England and defend what was properly hers. She gathered back from nobility all around the country and marched on London while evading the armies of her rivals. Elizabeth and Mary rode side by side into the city of England, one as a queen and the other as a queen in waiting. After winning the throne, Mary quickly married Philip of Spain, who was 10 years younger than her, in the hopes of conceiving an heir. This is where the Bloody Mary legend's origin starts to take shape. But long before this, since Mary was a teenager, Mary had suffered from excruciating menstrual cramps and irregular periods, which would ultimately be linked to her later life physical and mental stress. She was also known to be struck with deep and frequent periods of sadness and depressive spells, which would stay with her throughout her relatively short life. Starved for love and forever seeking the approval of her father, Mary would replay this codependent pattern with her new husband, who was in no way as eager to share Mary's passionate affections, but still carried out the agreed-upon obligations of a royal marriage. And 2 months later, Mary's greatest wish came true. She became pregnant. Despite exhibiting the typical signs of pregnancy, like swollen breasts and a developing belly, the public was still skeptical of the Queen's recent good fortune, and it didn't take long for suspicions of a fake pregnancy to start spreading. However, the big day came, but the baby didn't. She and the other maids suggested that possibly the delivery date had been miscalculated, and they now settled on a new date for June, which was 1 month later. But to everyone's shock, in late May, Mary's belly started to shrink. She waited, while others around her gradually lost hope, unable to describe or comprehend what was happening to her body. It is interesting to note that even today, the tale of Bloody Mary, Queen of England, remains one of the most infamous cases of supposed pseudocyesis, or phantom pregnancy. Pseudocyesis is a rare and enigmatic disorder that, to put it simply, happens when a person is so determined to get pregnant that they fool their own body into thinking they are, leading to the emergence of medical symptoms and even the discontinuation of the menstrual cycle. Another possibility of Mary's case could be endometrial hyperplasia, which is frequently a sign of uterine cancer. This theory is supported by stories of Mary's poor appetite and a history of irregular menstruation. She thought she was being punished by God for failing to complete a task she had set herself months ago. England's populace was split between Protestants and Catholics at the time of Mary's pregnancy. A few days before Christmas in 1554, Mary, who was determined to unite her people under the true religion of the land, took action by signing a law that would lead to the Marian persecutions, in which an estimated 240 men and 60 women were condemned as Protestants and burned at the stake, earning her the name Bloody Mary for all time. However, it is important to bring to light that Mary's father, Henry VIII, only executed 81 people during the length of his 38-year rule, although it's important to note that these numbers are undoubtedly inflated. Estimates indicate that Henry may have ordered the deaths of up to 57,000 to 72,000 of his people, including 2 of his wives. During his 6-year reign, Edward VI ordered the execution of 2 radical Protestant Anabaptists and authorized the suppression of the Prayer Book Rebellion in 1549. Which may have led to the deaths of up to 5,500 Catholics. During her 45-year reign, Mary's successor, Elizabeth I, burned 5 Anabaptists at the stake, executed about 800 Catholic rebels charged with participating in the Northern Earls' Revolt of 1569, and had at least 183 Catholics, the majority of whom were Jesuit missionaries, hanged, drawn, and quartered as traitors. If names like Bloody Mary are mostly based on numbers, then why aren't Mary's family members given the nicknames Bloody Henry, Bloody Edward, and Bloody Bess? Why has the Bloody Mary legend lingered in the popular consciousness of Great Britain for so long? And what did Mary do that was so different from the early modern European kings and queens? Years later, Mary made another pregnancy announcement. But this time, even her husband wasn't convinced. She was later found to have entered menopause after showing clear signs of pregnancy, but she once again failed to give birth. She passed away the next year at the age of 42, most likely from ovarian or uterine cancer. Even today, children chant her name in gloomy bathroom mirrors around the globe, all in the hopes of catching a horrifying glimpse of the ghost and being unaware of Bloody Mary's true history. What is your take on this? Do you agree with the popular notion of her being called Bloody Mary? Or did her real story make you emotional and you actually felt bad for her and understand her reasons for doing what she did? Let us know in the comment box below.